Question for you, how many great 1970s rock bands can you name? That did everything right, wrote the songs, played the shows, influenced the next generation, and still got pushed off the main stage like they never existed. Because tonight, we're not talking about Led Zeppelin, Sabbath, Aerosmith. We're talking about the bands that should have been standing next to them. We're talking about the groups other musicians quietly worship while the general public went, "Who?" Pause on that for a second. Imagine you're driving in 1975. FM radio still matters. You turn the dial and you catch 30 seconds of a song so heavy it sounds like early Metallica, years before Metallica was even a thing. You're hooked. You never hear the track again. You never hear the band name again, and history moves on without them. That happened a lot. This is the story of those bands, the ones rock radio didn't fully push, the ones MTV missed because they came too early, the ones that got their style stolen, their guitarist poached, or just had garbage label support. Some of the names you're about to hear literally laid the blueprint for 80s metal, 90s alt-rock, and modern power pop, and still never got the credit. So here's the mission. We're going back into the 70s and pulling 10 forgotten rock bands who deserved way more recognition. Not one-hit trivia, not nostalgia bait. These are the groups that should have been legends. Shift the energy, but I want you to listen actively here. As you go through this list, I want you to ask yourself, how does a band invent a sound that other bands later take to the bank, and somehow the inventors get memory hold? Budgie basically hands thrash metal its early DNA, speed, weight, attitude, and ends up a cult footnote while bands 10 years later go platinum off that same energy. Big Star maps out modern guitar pop, pain in the lyrics, jangle in the chords, heart on the sleeve, and instead of selling millions, they're stuck in distribution hell and break apart in frustration. Mother's Finest tried to fuse funk groove, soulful vocals, and hard rock power on the same stage in the mid-70s, and instead of being called pioneers, they got told by the industry, "We don't know what shelf to put you on. This isn't a casual list. This is, how did we let this happen? Shift again." Here's how we're gonna do it. First, we're counting down from 10 to 6, the slept-on tier. These are the bands that should have been bigger in their own time. Bands that scared headliners, bands that critics quietly loved, bands other players stole ideas from. Then we hit 5 to 1, the should-have-been legends tier. These are the acts where, honestly, if rock and roll were fair, we'd be talking about them in the same breath as the classic giants. No repeated artists, no filler, every single pick matters. Now, I'm gonna warn you about something. You're probably gonna hear a name in this video and think, wait, how have I never heard of them? That's actually good. And that moment right there, that feeling, that is why these episodes exist, because rock history is not just the bands who won, it's also the bands who should have. Final push, draw us ye, breakpoints ye, curiosity gap. So here's the question I want you sitting with as we start number 10. Was it talent that decided who became a legend in the 1970s, or was it timing, politics, and luck? Because by the time we get to number 1, you're gonna see a band that had the songs, had the image, had the label, had the hype, and still got locked out of true mainstream rock history. And when you hear why, it might actually make you angry. Let's start the countdown. Number 10. Let's start loud. Picture this. It's 1973, and rock is getting heavier. Sabbath is already scaring parents. Led Zeppelin is already selling out arenas. And then here comes this three-piece from Cardiff, Wales, called Budgie, a band that sounds like somebody hit fast forward on metal. Red Fan is chaos in a good way. The riff doesn't walk in, it kicks the door. The bass is running, the guitars are punching, the drums are trying to outrun traffic. It's fast in a way that points to the future. Years before people even used the term speed metal, Budgie is basically showing you how it's gonna feel. Aggressive, fast, technical, unapologetic. Now here's the twist. They should have blown up. They had the heaviness, they had the riffs, they had songwriting that could flip from violent to almost melodic and thoughtful in the same track. But Budgie didn't have the global machine behind them. No giant US push, no huge label promo. They were respected, especially in the UK and Europe, but they weren't getting that This is the next big thing story in America, and in the 70s, that mattered. If U.S. rock radio didn't throw you on heavy rotation, a lot of people never heard you, so Budgie became that insane band your older cousin swears is better than Sabbath. Instead of being on magazine covers, here's where it gets wild. In the late 80s, Metallica, at that point the biggest young metal band in the world, covers Bread Fan. That cover becomes a gateway drug. Suddenly, a new generation hears this song and goes, hold on, who are these guys? And the answer is, these guys were here first. So ask yourself this, if a band inspires the sound of the next wave of metal, but never gets the reward from it, is that a success story or a robbery? That's the Budgie story, lightning in 1973, credit 15 years later. Quick question for you watching, have you ever loved a song for years and only later found out it was a cover? Who was it? Drop it in the comments because you're not alone.
Hey, Rocklore community. Before we continue, let's have a real talk for a second, bro. You know, this isn't just a channel to us. And I hope it's not just a place you come to watch a video and then forget about it. This is a community. It's a place where we get to dig up the secrets of rock and roll, share our favorite riffs, and celebrate the artists who maybe didn't get the love they deserved. Right now, only about 1% of our viewers are subscribed. We can change that together and grow this community. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button with the notification bell on. When you do, you're not just helping a channel grow. You're becoming a member of the Rocklore family. You're signaling to us and to YouTube that these stories matter, that this music is worth preserving, and that this community is a place you want to be. Subscribing is your way of making sure you're always in the loop. It means you'll be the first to know when we unearth a forgotten legend, drop a new countdown, or dive into a piece of rock history you've never heard before. So if you're a true fan of the lore, if you get that same feeling of discovery that I do, then come join us. It takes 1 second to be a part of something bigger.
Wake before you sleep. They said you saw my news.
Now we go back even earlier, 1970. Before a lot of 70s hard rock even found its identity, there's this band called Trapeze. Small lineup, no huge backing singers, no horns, just 3 guys. Glenn Hughes on bass and vocals, Mel Galley on guitar, Dave Holland on drums. The chemistry is ridiculous. Trapeze didn't just play heavy rock, they played heavy rock with soul in it. That's important.
Fading forces fail. Now wake
Glenn Hughes wasn't just yelling over guitars, he was singing like a guy who loved Stevie Wonder as much as he loved Cream. You hear that on Medusa, the title track from their 1970 album. It's slow-burning, moody, dramatic, like a storm rolling in over open highway. Here's the middle of the story, the conflict. Trapeze should have had time to build. A band like that needs album 3, album 4, tour 2, tour 3, growth.
from a news. She was looking down on you.
But instead, the big leagues rated them. Deep Purple takes Glenn Hughes, Judas Priest takes Dave Holland. The big bands basically say thank you, we'll take those pieces now. So Trapeze loses key blood right when they're figuring themselves out. Imagine being so good that giant bands come and take your players. And at the same time, that's the reason you never get to become one of those giant bands. That's painful, and that's the story nobody talks about when we talk about 70s rock. How many almost bands got drained before they got famous? Last part of this arc, even today, people still talk about Medusa with respect.
Down on you. But the legend of Medusa.
Musicians know it, hardcore fans know it, but we're not putting Trapeze on classic rock radio next to Stairway to Heaven, and maybe we should. So here's your engagement question. Do you think talent always survives, or can timing kill a great band before the world even knows they exist?
Sailing us down the river.
This is where the story changes gears. Not every forgotten group was a leather jacket hard rock band. Some of them were too smart for the box they were put in. Bebop Deluxe were led by Bill Nelson, a serious guitar player, but not just a shred guy. This band had glam flavor, art school imagination, future tech, romantic language, and melody. They weren't just playing riffs, they were painting with guitar.
No treasures without love, I like to steal.
In 1976, they put out Ships in the Night, smooth groove, sleek rhythm, lyrical, stylish guitar lines. It's the closest thing they had to a real mainstream breakthrough. People heard that song and went, okay, this is sharp. And now comes the tension. Where do you put a band like this in 1976? Rock radio at that time loved blues-influenced hard rock, straight, no curveballs. Prog radio loved long, difficult songs.
Sailing away and forever.
Pop radio wanted hooks you could hum by the second chorus. Bebop Deluxe was all three at once. They were too guitar forward to be filed under art rock only, but they were too brainy, too elegant, too polished to sit next to sweaty bar bands.
Without love, sounding so down.
There was no clean marketing story, and in the 70s, if you didn't fit a lane, the machine did not slow down to build you a lane. Here's the heartbreak: when a band doesn't fit the era's marketing, history often buries them, not because the music is weak, but because the music didn't match the label's idea of what would sell that season. And that should make you ask something bigger about the 70s. How many bands weren't unsuccessful, they were just unclassifiable? Bill Nelson ends the band before the decade flips rather than water it down into something it wasn't. Integrity over mainstream. So yeah, Bebop Deluxe didn't become a household name. But you can hear their sound in a lot of later new wave and alt-rock bands that tried to mix guitar flash with art school brains. Your turn when you listen to Ships in the Night. Does it sound 70s to you, or does it sound ahead of the 70s?
Watch the flowers go to bed. Ask the man inside the head.
Let's talk danger. If most rock bands in the mid-70s were long hair, denim jacket, maybe a beer, the Sensational Alex Harvey Band was fever dream in a back alley at 2 a.m. Alex Harvey didn't act like a normal frontman. He acted like a storyteller who had dirt on everybody in the room. Gritty voice, street preacher intensity, half threat, half confession. And next to him, you had Zal Clemenson on guitar, sometimes in face paint.
Your spirit never have to grieve. I'll get back.
Mime, clown style, moving like a cartoon villain. It wasn't just music, it was theater. Now hear the song, The Faith Healer. It's not fast. It doesn't try to knock you out in 10 seconds. It creeps up. It pulls you into this hypnotic, pulsing groove like you're watching some kind of midnight ritual. It feels like you're not just hearing the band, you're being recruited. That attitude mattered.
Ask the man inside your head. Finger
They built cult followings in tough places. We're talking industrial cities, working class crowds, the kind of audiences who will boo you off stage in under 30 seconds if they think you're fake. Those people didn't boo, those people watched. But here comes the problem in the middle of this story. America never truly broke them wide. They were loved in certain pockets. Certain U.S. cities swore they were better than half the big names, but they never became a national headline act.
I'll get back to believe.
They never crossed into that level where everybody knows at least one of your songs by title, and timing is part of why, because right behind them comes punk, and punk shows up and says, "We're the dangerous ones now." But the truth is, Sensational Alex Harvey Band had already been bringing that raw, live wire danger years earlier. Their showmanship bleeds into early punk attitude and later into darker theatrical rock acts. So ask yourself this: why do some people get credit for starting a fire and some people get remembered as influenced by the fire, even if they lit it? Here's the last beat. When you watch old footage of this band, no safety, no polish, no rules, you realize something. Rock used to scare people. It used to feel like anything could happen. These guys kept that feeling alive. Question for you, do you think modern rock lost that sense of real danger? Yes or no? Now we shift again because this story is also about race and it's also about gatekeeping. Mother's Finest came out of Atlanta with something almost nobody else in the mainstream was doing in the late 70s. They mixed hard rock power with deep funk and soul vocals, and they did it with a black woman, Joyce Baby Jean Kennedy, absolutely tearing through the mic. That alone should have changed the direction of rock radio. Listen to Baby Love from 1977. You get heavy guitars, you get tight, punchy groove, you get a vocal that sounds like pain and power at the same time. You can dance to it, you can headbang to it, you can't sit still to it, and crowds felt that. Mother's Finest went out on tour with monster rock acts, The Who, Black Sabbath, AC/DC, and they didn't just survive. There are stories of them stealing whole shows because nobody else had that combination of groove and force, but here's where we hit the wall. The industry did not know what to do with them. In the 70s, the business liked clean boxes, rock station, R&B station, disco station, soul station. Mother's Finest was built to explode those walls. Rock stations would sometimes say, this is too funky. R&B stations would sometimes say, this is too hard rock. So the song lives in between. Baby Love did chart. It did get attention, but it didn't get the kind of machine push that changes careers forever. This is important. When a band doesn't fit the system will try to spit them out. Instead of evolving, and that's why this band is on this list, because musically they were ahead, culturally they were ahead, stage-wise they were ahead. They were doing in 1977 what a lot of late 80s and 90s bands tried to do later: fuse funk and heavy rock, front it with real authority, and sell it as stadium energy. They just weren't allowed to own that lane. So here's the question I want you to sit with as we move forward. When we talk about rock history, who gets written into the book and who gets quietly erased because they didn't match the format? And follow-up, if Mother's Finest had come out in 1992 instead of 1977, do you think the world would know their name the same way we know bands that mixed funk and metal in the 90s?
This video is sponsored by the Lore Store on Amazon, your one-stop shop for music lovers across reggae, rock, pop, and hip-hop. We built it for real listeners who don't want to dig through 1,000 listings to find the right gear. Inside the Lore Store, you'll find 5 aisles. VIP, top, battle-tested essentials. Headphones, turntables, speakers, gig-safe earplugs, smart speakers. Reggae vibe, roots and lovers. Rock made easy, automatic decks, warm bookshelf speakers, vinyl care. Rock lore, classic rock must-haves. Open back cans, simple amps, living room concert vibes. Pop lore, feel-good everyday setups, clean, clear speakers, easy streaming, nostalgia-friendly picks. Hip-hop must-haves, punchy bass without the muddle, closed-back headphones and living room systems that handle low-end, plus a rotating crate of old album vinyl if you're rebuilding a 60s-90s collection. Every product page tells you who it's for, 3 pros, 1 con, and why we picked it. So you can choose with confidence. Flying soon? Check. VIP for noise canceling that tames plane roar. Mostly listening at home? Try open-back headphones that let live albums breathe. Want instant gratification vinyl? Our fully automatic turntable is 1 button from silence to music, and the record cleaning kit knocks down crackle so the bass tightens up. Headed to shows? Grab high-fidelity earplugs. Hands-free at home? Our smart speaker picks let you say, play 70s reggae or classic pop, and you're there. Deal alert. If you use the link in the description, you'll land on our curated picks with current best available Amazon pricing and active discounts where applicable. Prices change, so buy now to lock in today's deal. Tap the link in the description, pick your aisle, grab a favorite, and tell me which category you want me to build next. The Lore Store. Listen better, with gear that gets out of the way and lets the music live.
before twin lead guitar became standard in hard rock and metal, before Thin Lizzy made it swagger, before Judas Priest weaponized it, before Iron Maiden turned it into an air raid siren, there was Wishbone Ash. Wishbone Ash didn't just have a lead guitarist and a rhythm guitarist. They had two lead guitarists playing in harmony, like two voices finishing each other's sentences. For rock guitar, that was a shift. That sound became a core part of 70s and 80s heavy music. Bands after them got rich off it. Wishbone Ash somehow did not. In 1972, they drop Argus. The record blends hard rock muscle, folk warmth, and almost medieval drama. Prophecy, Kings, Soldiers, Destiny. That album goes to number 3 in the UK. Critics love it. Musicians love it. Fans who find it feel like they've discovered some secret mythic text. The King Will Come, off Argus, is the full package. Guitars climbing and circling each other, tension you can feel, lyrics that sound like they were dug up from some ancient battlefield. It's not bar rock, it's not blues rock, it's not party rock, it's cinematic. But here's the problem. America didn't crown them. In the US, you got respect mainly if radio gave you one or two songs that stayed in rotation. Wishbone Ash never really became regular radio language in the States, so even though their ideas lived on in huge metal and hard rock bands later, they didn't get carried across the ocean as icons. That's the sting. You helped invent a core sound of modern guitar rock, and the reward is cult favorite. So let's ask something honest, and I want you to answer this in the comments.
The sky will fall, the earth will break, when judgment.
Do we remember the first person who did it, or the first person who sold millions doing it? If we only remember the seller, not the inventor, then Wishbone Ash proves how unfair that memory is. Because if you play guitar, you owe them something. Now we go to Memphis. Big Star is the sound of being young, in love, disappointed, awake at 2 a.m., and still romantic enough to try again. Alex Chilton and the band basically build the entire playbook for what we now call power pop. Bright chiming guitars, beautiful melody, lyrics that actually admit weakness.
Boys got it bad.
September Girls, from their 1974 album Radio City, feels like pop, but it hurts like real life. It's catchy, but it's not shallow. It sounds like the Beatles got dropped in an American southern city, got emotionally wrecked, and then wrote about it with no filter. This should have been huge. This should have been the moment where Big Star becomes the new face of intelligent guitar music in the mid-70s. Instead, almost no one hears it. Why? Distribution. The label situation was a mess.
I get too bad.
Stores literally didn't have the record. Imagine that. You make an album critics worship, you write one of the best guitar pop songs of the decade, and people physically cannot buy it. That killed them. The band never became a mainstream chart act in the 1970s. They're not on TV. They're not on constant radio. They're not being introduced to America's suburbs like arena bands were. But here's where the story flips. The kids who did find Big Star, they grew up to become the next generation of alternative and indie rock. REM, The Replacements, and then basically everyone who ever tried to make honest, jangly guitar music in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. So Big Star lost in real time and then quietly won the long game. That raises a question for you, and I want real answers. Not just nostalgia. Would you rather be huge in your own time and forgotten later, or be slept on in your time and become a secret influence on everybody who comes after you? Because September Girls is the sound of option 2. It's the ghost in the family tree of modern rock.
Just to see you there. I just remember.
Captain Beyond is what happens when guys from name bands decide, let's make the record we actually want, not the record the label expects. You've got Rod Evans from Deep Purple. You've got players tied to Iron Butterfly and Johnny Winter. So on paper, this should have been easy money. Ex-members of known acts form a new supergroup and cash in. That's not what they did. Instead, their 1972 self-titled album opens with dancing madly backwards on a sea of air, and the song just refuses to behave. The riffs hit like hard rock. The rhythms flip without warning like progressive rock. The drumming sounds like fusion in places. You can't sit still to it, but you also can't predict it. Now here's the problem. Radio in the early 70s wanted lanes. Are you bluesy biker bar hard rock? Cool, we have a slot for that. Are you long-form prog with fantasy lyrics? Cool, we have a slot for that. Captain Beyond sat in the crack between those lanes, too weird for basic bar rock, too aggressive and punchy for mellow prog radio. Result? Programmers didn't know which audience to pitch them to, so they just didn't. That's how you end up with one of the most interesting heavy records of the early 70s, being loved by musicians and hardcore fans, but never pushed into the normal listener's life. This is where the story gets kind of beautiful. Captain Beyond became a cult band. Not cult like spooky, cult like sacred, the kind of band other musicians recommend to each other quietly. You don't know Captain Beyond? Fix that! Those are the bands that survive in conversation without ever really surviving on the charts. Engagement question for you. When you think legend, do you think sales or do you think respect? Because Captain Beyond never sold like a household name, but in terms of respect, they're spoken about like a secret weapon. And ask yourself this, how many bands today are still scared to try something that doesn't fit radio? Captain Beyond did it in 1972. No apology. Crack the Sky is one of those bands that, if you grew up in certain U.S. cities, you'll swear was massive. And if you grew up anywhere else, you're like, who? Their 1975 self-titled debut had everything critics were begging for at the time. Sharp guitars, tight arrangements, weird smart lyrics, sarcasm, attitude, hooks that still felt clever, not dumbed down. Some critics and magazines hyped them like, this is the next important American rock band. There were people calling that debut one of the best first albums in years. Some even said, best American prog-style band nobody knows, so why aren't they legendary across the whole country? Distribution, that's it. Not the music, not the talent, not the songwriting, the boring stuff. Their label simply did not get the record into enough stores, fast enough in enough regions. So instead of breaking nationally, Crack the Sky blew up regionally, especially around Baltimore and on certain rock stations that championed them. Locally, they were heroes. Fans treated them like our band, not just a band. She's a Dancer became one of those songs people would pass to each other like a secret. Nationally, silence. Here's why this is painful and important. We act like the best music always wins. That's the story we tell. It makes us feel like the system is fair. But Crack the Sky proves that's not always true. Sometimes the music is there, the identity is there, even the press is there, and the pipeline fails. The money. The trucks, the physical records, that's it. So I want you to sit with this and answer in the comments. Do you think in the streaming era, a band like Crack the Sky would have exploded worldwide? No gatekeepers, just word of mouth? Or do you think even now in 2025, we're still at the mercy of who gets amplified and who gets buried? Because She's a Dancer is the kind of song that should have put them on the map forever. Instead, it stamped them into one region's memory, and sometimes that's all a band gets, a city that refuses to forget them.
Hey, Rocklore community. Before we continue, let's have a real talk for a second, bro. You know, this isn't just a channel to us. And I hope it's not just a place you come to watch a video and then forget about it. This is a community. It's a place where we get to dig up the secrets of rock and roll, share our favorite riffs, and celebrate the artists who maybe didn't get the love they deserved. Right now, only about 1% of our viewers are subscribed. We can change that together and grow this community. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button with the notification bell on. When you do, you're not just helping a channel grow, you're becoming a member of the Rocklore family. You're signaling to us and to YouTube that these stories matter, that this music is worth preserving, and that this community is a place you want to be. Subscribing is your way of making sure you're always in the loop. It means you'll be the first to know when we unearth a forgotten legend, drop a new countdown, or dive into a piece of rock history you've never heard before. So if you're a true fan of the lore, if you get that same feeling of discovery that I do, then come join us. It takes 1 second to be a part of something bigger.
Now we get to number 1. This is the one that honestly makes people mad. Angel formed in Washington, D.C. in the mid-70s. Gene Simmons from Kiss sees them and basically says, yeah, sign those guys. They land on Casablanca Records. Big label, big era, real push. So already, this is not some tiny bar band story. Angel had backing. They also had an angle. Kiss at the time were black leather, fire, demons, blood. Angel flips it, all white outfits, androgynous, almost supernatural look, high drama, fantasy presentation.
With the stars as my guide. So
The pitch was basically, if Kiss are the dark side, Angel is the light side. That's branding, that's story, that's sellable. Now take the image and match it with the sound. On their 1975 self-titled debut, the song Tower comes in like the soundtrack for a fantasy epic.
gonna tell the tale from the land of Delphi.
You've got Frank Domino on these soaring vocals, Greg Giuffria doing big dramatic keyboards, Punky Meadows playing like a glam hero who also actually has serious chops. It's not bar rock, it's not biker rock, it's theatrical hard rock pointing toward arena scale. In a fair world, this is the moment where you say, okay, here's the next arena band, and yet they never truly cross into top-tier mainstream fame. Why?
No one here but my empty thoughts and a sword by my
Some of it was timing. They were a little too musically ambitious for people who just wanted simple glam. Some of it was marketing. Some of it, honestly, is that they always lived next to a louder story, Kiss, and Kiss was already taking up that oxygen. Angel had the look, the hooks, the label, the mythology. They just didn't become one of the names everyone knows. The punchline and the question. And that's why they're number 1 on this list, because this isn't just a good band people slept on. This is a band that did everything you're supposed to do to become huge in the 70s rock world. Talent, concept, visual identity, label support, memorable songs, and still got stuck in cult status.
tale from the land of Delphi.
That tells you something uncomfortable about rock history. Success is not just about how good you are, it's also about how the market decides to frame you. So here's what I want from you right now before you click away. Is Angel a lost legend, or were they simply not built for the mainstream?
Journey starts at the edge of town.
In other words, do you think rock culture failed them, or did they just belong to a niche all along? Be real with it, because that last question is the real heart of this entire countdown.